When you think of blimps, you probably picture floating billboards, or maybe the Goodyear blimp at a football game. But what if I told you blimps were once imagined as weapons of war, flying hotels, even floating cities? Some of these ideas sound ridiculous, others terrifying, and a few actually made it into the skies. Today we're diving into the weirdest, wildest, and most ambitious blimp experiments in history, ideas so strange, you'll wonder how the world almost looked completely different. Imagine this: you're a German U-boat commander in World War II, lurking beneath the waves. And suddenly, the sky above hums, not with planes, but with a blimp. Sounds ridiculous, right? But the US actually deployed hundreds of patrol blimps, and they were armed with depth charges. These submarine hunters floated low, scanning the seas for periscopes and oil slicks. Unlike planes, they could hover for days, quietly tracking submarines until the perfect moment to strike. And get this, they were so effective that no convoy guarded by a blimp was ever lost to a U-boat. So, the next time you picture blimps as harmless floating billboards, remember, in WWII II, they were silent, deadly, and the nightmare of submarines. And if you thought hunting submarines with blimps was wild, wait until you hear about the time engineers wanted them to become flying gas stations. Imagine a giant blimp hovering thousands of feet in the air. But instead of passengers, it carried fuel. In the 1930s, engineers dreamed of flying aircraft refuelers, massive airships that could top up fighter planes mid-flight, like floating gas stations in the sky. The idea was simple, but insane. Extend the range of warplanes forever by never letting them land. Sounds brilliant, right? The problem? Turbulence. Trying to connect a tiny plane to a massive, drifting airship was almost impossible. One wrong move and both could be destroyed. So the project was shelved, leaving us to wonder, if it had worked, would blimps have become the ultimate power above the clouds? But topping up fighter planes was just the start. Some militaries wanted blimps to carry entire arsenals of missiles. Imagine looking up and seeing a blimp armed with missiles. Sounds insane, right? But during the Cold War, scientists actually proposed floating missile defense platforms, massive airships that could hover for weeks at high altitude, acting like flying fortresses. The idea was simple but terrifying. Station blimps above cities or coastlines, load them with anti-aircraft or even nuclear weapons, and use them as the first line of defense against enemy bombers. They'd carry powerful radars, track targets across hundreds of miles, and rain down destruction from the sky. But here's the catch. These giant, slow-moving blimps would have been easy targets themselves, sitting ducks against jets and missiles, so the projects never got off the ground. Still, the fact that militaries even considered turning blimps into floating missile bases shows just how wild the future of airships could have been. Of course, not every blimp was meant for war. Some designers imagined the opposite, turning them into floating luxury hotels. Imagine booking a ticket in the 1920s, not for a cruise ship, but for a luxury blimp hotel floating above the clouds. Designers dreamed of airships with ballrooms where you could dance mid-flight, smoking lounges with glass windows overlooking entire cities, and dining halls serving champagne while you drifted silently through the sky. These floating palaces were marketed as the future of travel, safer and more elegant than airplanes, and more adventurous than trains. But the dream never took off, cut short by high costs and one infamous disaster that made passengers wary of airships. So, the question is, if someone built a flying hotel today, with modern tech and safety, would you spend a night there? And while some dreamed of champagne above the clouds, others dreamed of solving Earth's problems with blimps, like towing icebergs across the ocean. Imagine a sky filled with massive blimps dragging icebergs across the ocean. Sounds like science fiction, right? But in the 1960s, engineers actually proposed iceberg-towing blimps, flying giants that would latch onto frozen mountains and haul them toward thirsty cities. The idea was simple: melt the ice into fresh drinking water. But here's the twist: each iceberg can weigh millions of tons, and the power needed to tow, even one would have crushed the dream before it left the ground. Still, the vision of a blimp guiding a floating iceberg like a sky shepherd proves just how far humanity was willing to go to solve water shortages. So, would you drink from an iceberg delivered by blimp? But if you think hauling icebergs was ambitious, get this: some futurists pictured entire cities floating among the clouds. Imagine entire cities floating in the sky. Not science fiction, but real futuristic concepts where blimps the size of skyscrapers would act as airborne towns. Picture giant solar panels stretched across their massive envelopes, powering everything from homes to restaurants, with people literally living among the clouds. These sky cities were dreamed up as eco-friendly solutions to overcrowding on Earth, combining clean solar energy with the endless open air above us. But here's the twist. Engineers still debate if the physics could actually work. How do you balance thousands of tons of weight while keeping the airship stable? If successful, though, these blimps could carry entire communities, drifting across the world like floating utopias. So the question is, would you dare to move your whole life into the sky? And finally, one of the strangest and deadliest ideas of all, the battle blimp, armed to the teeth with cannons. Imagine looking up at the sky in World War I, and instead of planes, you see a massive blimp armed with cannons strapped to its sides. These battle blimps were real prototypes, floating fortresses meant to rain fire on enemies from above. Engineers thought they could dominate the battlefield, combining the height advantage of an airship with the raw firepower of artillery. But there was one massive problem. Blimps are basically giant floating targets, slow, easy to hit, and packed with gas. They were sitting ducks for enemy fire. The dream of Sky Fortress blimps quickly vanished, replaced by faster, deadlier airplanes. Still, the idea of cannon blimps remains one of the weirdest and most terrifying experiments in aviation history. From submarine hunters to flying hotels, and even cities in the sky, blimps have always been more than just balloons in the air. They were visions of power, luxury, and even survival. Some worked, most failed, but all of them prove one thing: humanity has never stopped dreaming of the skies. So, the next time you see a blimp drifting overhead, ask yourself, is it just a billboard or the blueprint of our future? If you want to see more of the forgotten, bizarre, and futuristic world of airships, make sure to subscribe, because the future of blimps might be stranger and closer than you think.